Teachers, how can you tell if a student dislikes you? Had a girl tell a math teacher to suck her D once. I had an 8th header who very calmly started calling me by my first name when I tried to get him to stop talking and get back to work in class one day. Okay, Liz, getting right back to work. Liz, I was half really pissed off and half pretty impressed by how much he had managed to piss me off by just saying my name. It's usually pretty obvious, but sometimes they can surprise you. I once had a student scowl at me every time he walked in. I tried to remain cordial, but he'd grunt and snap anytime I spoke to him. He turned work in infrequently and was generally sullen. Fast forward 8 months. This kid starts walking towards my class on Teacher Appreciation Day with a giant gift basket of stuff that I like. He slams it down on my desk and growls in a way that was totally contrary to his words, "You're my favorite teacher." So like, you never really know. Actually, that's pretty easy. The harder part is telling if they actually like you. A lot of teenagers at least aren't very emotive publicly one way or the other. I've gotten notes from kids who I honestly thought didn't enjoy my class after they leave that say I was their favorite teacher. You just do what you think is best and trust eventually they'll come around. In elementary school, it's really easy because they will just tell you straight to your face. I have never met anyone more straightforward, or brutally honest, than a 4th grader. 7th to 12th grade teacher here. Children are usually pretty open about it, but don't take it personal. They don't have strong feelings about you if you're not mistreating them. The smart ones might try to make fun of you behind your back, but they're doing that to each other as well. Establishing some kind of dominance or position is normal group behavior. It's funny how they think that you don't notice their behavior. Most children actually have no problems with the teacher, but the way and the content of what you're teaching. More rare, but a dead giveaway, they have their parents asked to switch them out of a class. They're usually pretty obvious blatant about it. Had a girl once in a pretty rough school who decided it would be a good idea to roll up a piece of paper and light it like a cigarette in the middle of class. I was so shocked I just told her to leave and pointed at the door. So she came straight up to me, dropped the makeshift cigarette in front of my face, and then said there's only 2 minutes left in class. To say I was seething is an understatement. I don't think it would be so hard to tell. I assume it would be like anyone else hating you and it doesn't take long to figure that out. A friend of mine said as a quote for the yearbook freshman year, "The hardest part of freshman year was teacher's name." That quote is in the yearbook, so I think the teacher knows my friend doesn't like them. The feeling is usually mutual at the college-university level. If they don't show up to class and show genuine disinterest while in class by texting, talking loudly, etc., I assume they don't have any respect for me. I then won't like them either. There are a million courses to take. You didn't have to sign up for mine and then be a prick by disrespecting everyone around you trying to learn. Oh, they are obvious. Eye rolling at you the whole time. Talk back. Attitude. The list is endless. It's the same as you disliking a coworker. Grad school instructor here. You find out a month after the semester ends when you get your Qualtrics report and figure out who is the hater based on their writing style. High school English teacher. If they really don't like me, everything in class is a fight. Read something? No. Write something? No. Do anything? Nope. Or they mutter it under their breath when I walk away. When I was a new teacher I had some students literally tell me to duck off. It's pretty obvious when students don't like you versus just not liking the curriculum. However, I genuinely just want the best for all my students and I just want them to pass and move on with their lives, even if they are buttheads in class. Luckily the longer I teach, the more students like my class and those students are few and far between these days. As a student, I don't dislike teachers, but being forced to legally be at school makes the standard for me not so optimistic and cheerful. Honestly, you can tell if a student dislikes you, since only the most trashy ones would visibly show it while most would just talk it behind your back. What else can they do? You would have to be the worst possible teacher for them to start protesting and making your class hell. But if a student likes you, that's much easier to notice. If you find your students treat you more like a friend and give you respect, that means they like you. If you find your students act casual around you, that means they think you're a great teacher. If you find your students crack jokes and overall actually like being there, you are probably their favorite teacher. Emma, save this post. Hope it doesn't die in you. We always know. They always tell us. Sometimes several times a day. Hi, student here. Normally if a teacher does something stupid, I'll look to others with WTF eyes. It's a pretty good giveaway. They avoid you at all costs. Don't talk to you. Ignore you. Don't listen. Or, they'll do anything to make your life miserable. Preschoolers are ruthless. They all like me right now. But boy howdy I would know if they didn't. They write MRS. Marzipan gargoyle sucks butt in a book in the classroom library. I laughed out loud when I saw it. Middle school teacher. They'll straight up tell you. Lots of eye rolls. Disrespect. The more disrespectful they are, the kinder I am to them. It's not worth taking it personally. Teacher here. I don't usually spend much time worrying if the students like me, and teens aren't always the most secretive with their emotions. Lots of sighing, eye rolling, or they outright tell you. I often win most of them over throughout the year, but some kids simply don't like the teacher because they hate school in general, or they hate your particular subject. Not much you can do about that. The teachers that worry more about being the students' friends than being an engaging teacher are super cringy. They are the teachers that kids will talk about behind their backs, saying things like I love MRMs X because we don't do anything in their class, but then next year they will say things like wow MRMs X didn't teach us anything. They sucked. I'd rather have a kid hate me for a year only to realize I was doing my best to help them than to have them love me for a year only to realize I wasn't teaching them anything and they aren't prepared for the next class. Most of them won't. Don't worry about it. Just teach. If you're fair with attention and punishment, they'll come round. Been flight instructing for 3 years now, and most of my students are professional, rational, almost grown-ups. Which is just what you need for teaching while flying an airplane. What you don't need is headstrong students questioning your every instruction when both our lives depend on you getting your descent checklist done as written. Becky. Got a good story for this. I student taught 6th grade. I took a kid's phone away one day. The next day after he sat down, he called me over. Mr. Churchill, I decided I don't like you. I don't want you to be a teacher anymore. So I'm gonna fail this class so they know you're a bad teacher. Sometimes they just choose to be blunt. Same way you tell with any person. Anxious eyes during eye contact. Like a slight pained face. Avoidance. Probing. Accusatory questions and statements. Desire to separate from you. And separate other people from you. Talking behind your back. Misinterpreting your statements or taking them out of context. For teachers all of that is irrelevant though, because at least at the college level, students are very incentivized to kiss ass. At least in the media department they were. I have a 2nd grader who will literally roll her eyes and sigh when I walk into the room. She ignores everything I say to her and doesn't even acknowledge me when I'm talking to her. It's actually extremely frustrating because I just genuinely want the best for her. And yes, sometimes that involves some rough talks and punishments. But oh well. Then I have others who love me so much. They tell me every single detail of their lives because they know that I'll listen and actually care about what they're saying to me. I had an English teacher that everyone hated. Her last name was Jervik. Any guesses what we called her? I work with kids with autism. Believe me, they let you know, lol. I'm not a teacher, per se, but I do have about 4 months of experience with 3 students thanks to the pandemic. During that time, I developed this philosophy. Assume that they all hate you and make them prove otherwise. Trust no one. They will blame you for their lack of understanding and poor grades when confronted by the teachers that live on their computers. You can tell the same way a student can tell a teacher dislikes you. You may not be aware of what your facial expressions or your body language or vibe is like, but people can tell. And when people sense you don't like or respect them, they return it. I teach high school. It's honestly not hard to tell. Sometimes they roll their eyes. Sometimes they stop coming to class. Sometimes they just tell you right to your face that they hate you and you should F off. I've had it all. You can't take it personally. I agree with what some have said, that a lot of times it's really the subject and the fact that you're pushing them to be better that they hate, and not always you. All you can do is try to see things from their point of view and assess what you can change to make your teaching better, or have better interactions with your students. I stepped into a role last year, replacing a beloved teacher who took a new role on the administrative team. To let me know they hated me, my new students snapped all my pencils in half and left the shards all over the room, spat their gum and or food on the floor, cut up erasers and threw the pieces around like confetti, left their trash all over the floor, ripped down my window clings, which they then chewed up and spat at each other around the room, refused to look at me while I was teaching, forgot how to speak English or refused to try, spent all period playing PUBG, showed up late, left early, in some cases both, cut class entirely, drew D's on all my tables and chairs, erased any nice things my former students would write on my board, stole packs of gum and giant boxes of expensive scratch and sniff stickers from my desk. And my personal favorite was that a student went to the administration to accuse me of accusing them of stealing my phone and swearing at the class. Every day, pick a different student to follow after class. Eventually, one of them will be talking smack about you with their buddy completely oblivious to the fact that you're right behind them listening. You just know it's a combination of everything. You're spending 5 hours, minimum, in high school with students a week. You get to know them. It's their facial expressions, their body language, their tone, how much effort they put into work, their attention span, their willingness to engage in simple conversation, their interest in telling you about their life. As a teacher who tells my students that sometimes there are things more important than what they're learning going on in your life, and that sometimes you're hungry and sometimes you're tired and sometimes you're ducking angry, and that you just need to communicate that with me and we'll work through it. It becomes easier to tell when it's that and when it's I just don't like you. I don't really care. Threats of physical violence are usually indicators a particular student is less than happy at the moment. I had a student tell me if he found out he had a bad grade he would become violent toward me. I called his house that night and told them he was flunking. Pretty much the same way you tell that anybody doesn't like you. Glaring, long-suffering sighs, and eye rolling are all general indicators. Former student here. They knew I didn't like them if I A, gave them the long stare with a slight sneer, or B, or my personal fave, pointing out that you can't ask student for an opinion and then tell them they're wrong because that means you clearly don't understand what an opinion is, which makes you unqualified to be teaching English. Looking at you, Mr. White, you pretentious piece of horse manure. They don't try in your class. If a student likes and respects you, they are more likely to show effort. Probably if they don't come to your class. My students like to drop little hints such as you're a rich, duck off, or I don't like you as a teacher. I'm trained to notice these subtle signs that a student may be unhappy with me as their teacher. Mostly to me, it is obvious when a student dislikes me. They roll their eyes, shrug you off whenever you try to get them involved and don't cooperate. When I started teaching at an all-girls school here in Thailand, I had 5 different classes of students and hardly any of them liked me in the beginning. It took like 4 or 5 weeks before they started warming up to me. But once they realized I am just trying to make class fun for them and help them learn, they changed their tune. Now 3 years later I still teach them and I am quite close to them, and they are always happy to see me and tell me they miss me whenever we have term breaks or anything. One student baked me a cake for my birthday and they come talk to me in between classes and in the halls too, which is nice. There are still a handful of students who dislike me, but you can't get everyone to like you. They are 12-15 years old. Usually the younger students like you automatically, but you have to learn it from the older girls. I work with kindergartners, so if they don't like you, they'll tell you straight to your face without blinking. When you are a teacher, you teach and you treat your students with care and respect. The rest isn't that important. If you are doing your job, the kids like you well enough. As someone who teaches adults, I think when they don't engage or connect with you at all, not in a shy, reserved way, but in a bored, disinterested way, most adults respond pretty well to personal interest in general questions about how they're going, etc. If an adult chooses to kinda blow you off, At a minimum they don't care about you or your interest in them, and that might indicate dislike or indifference. They also have more facial expressions when reacting to stuff, like sighing or raised eyebrows, hesitating before responding as well. But again with a certain tone, not like I'm not sure so I'm thinking, but either you're an idiot. How do I explain this to you, or I don't care if I waste your time. This is speaking kinda from a student perspective too. Seeing some other adult students in one of my uni courses and how they interact with a really lousy lecturer. HS teacher here. It comes down to the lack of respect. For me, if a student respects me, they will understand that I have their best interests in mind. That I am there to be helpful but not coddle. That I have high expectations that are realistic and growth oriented. Kids that don't like me think I'm just trying to be a mean teacher, or that I'm singling them out with my classroom policies. They act like they are the victim and I am the perpetrator. Sometimes I can tell by their body language actions that a small group in class was just making fun of me like a little group of bullies, and that it will take you back to middle school or high school for a second. I have bigger problems so I don't really care, but for a little bit, I get that insecure kid being bullied anxiety lol. First year at my current school I taught a 2nd grade class. The next year I was teaching kindergarten. Student said to me one day, "You were in my brother's class last year. He doesn't like you." You're a teacher. They are supposed to dislike you. We don't care. You are more invested in it than we are for the most part. We are there to do a job, and if you don't want to participate or make it harder for yourself, that's on you. We don't want to make our job harder for ourselves either. That's why good teachers work hard at creating positive classroom culture. If we love our job, you'll love us too. Not a teacher, but a student. I'll look visibly upset that I have to attend your class you made so bland when last year's teacher made it fun and intriguing as all hell. Soy professor de psicologia y generalmente mi figlio semi estudiante in alguna conducta salga di lugar como una arrogancia gigante o bien un orgullo grande ya que esos chicos son los que tienen padres que van a meter en problemas por cualquier cosa. Siempre mi figlio clase de estudiante tengo y honestamente sabiendo psicologia me desagradan los chicos que son vivorasos que tienen una larga memoria y son muy precisos y calculadores en todo ya que esos chicos es como si plantearan tu fin y supieran como hacerlo de una manera perfecta. Generalmente estos chicos y chicas vivoras se esconden en lindas apariencias pero siempre quiero descubrir quiénes son para mantenerlas digiladas son los más peligrosos. Teachers. Here's how I'll let my teachers know I didn't like them. I glared at them angrily and spoke little words to them, and made it obvious I didn't want to be anywhere near them. The comments on this are gonna be fun. I've had groups of students go to the principal of the school complaining that I was a bad teacher 1 month into my first ever teaching gig. Hurt like hell to pour my heart and soul into giving them the best lessons I could, only to have them try to sabotage me behind my back. Now as a sub, most of the time kids just openly dislike me simply because I'm not their normal teacher. A lot of the time they think they're being sneaky because I won't call them out on it, but most of the time it's just a pointless thing to bring up because they'll just hate me more. Surprisingly, I like all my teachers this year, although my English teacher does give a bit more work than the others. I got told to go duck myself this morning. I deduced it came from a student with a passionate dislike of me. When they throw wet tissues and erasers at me. I had this one teacher that no one liked, and everyone would tell it to her face. She was pretty strict, but I felt bad, so I always smiled and told her that she was my favorite teacher. They most likely don't talk to you and give you the stink eye even if you're doing nothing. I don't think I've ever tried to hide it when I didn't like a teacher lol. If they hit you, it's a pretty good sign. Easiest thing in the world. It's simple. Do they apologize or teabag you after killing you in a video game? It's pretty easy to tell, but it's important not to take it personally. As a teacher, I try to make sure I treat everyone equally, and even the students I hate get the same positive amount of attention as the ones I like. You've gotta be professional about it and remember it often isn't even about you. They might hate the subject, the school, the classmates, etc. and you're just the target they can lash out at easiest. They either refuse to turn stuff in or they do get assignments in but the quality is poor. Had an 8-year-old tell me when he's older he will come back for me and saw off my legs, cut me to pieces and damage my car. This is in addition to the myriad of torturous acts he vowed his family to do to me. No inferring required there. He spanks me too hard at night. Not a teacher, but I had teacher who was driving us crazy with his tests. So I straight up him. I thought he was a horrible teacher. Somehow earned his respect with that and he became one of my biggest helps as I went off to college. But boy, that was the talk of the campus after I said it to him. One thing that they will do is to remember one thing you say and they challenge you with OSA proofs they find online with questionable sources. They will literally tell you. I had the weird skill of becoming the teacher's pet no matter how much I hated a teacher. I was a C student so no overachiever but I had some teachers that just loved praising me in class and I hated it. When I graduated I had multiple teachers that I hated with a passion thank me for being such a great student, which was really confusing. I got a bit of insight from my favorite teacher who I was pretty open with. She described my personality as the perfect mix of charm and not giving a duck. Her words, not mine, but still. My wife is a 4th grade teacher. They usually just scream I hate you. Honestly, it's their fault though, as they were supposed to bring balance to the force and not leave it in darkness.